Hey, I'm Cyclon, and tomorrow we're going to get the final event of the December events, which is Delirium Everywhere. And I think it's going to be the most amazing of all of them. Atlas Invasion was good. It had the bosses, it was fun, it felt like a tiny league, like a metamorph. But Delirium was an amazing league in itself, having at every instance. It was a loot fiesta, and now we're going to get it back, kind of. So what we're going to get are no mirrors of Delirium, but Delirious instances. So we're going to get an effect randomly between 1 and 100 applied to that instance. So I assume 1 to 19 means 1 reward, 20 to 39 means 2 rewards, 40 to 59 means 3 rewards, 60 to 79 means 4 rewards, 80 to 99 means 5 rewards, and 100 means 6 rewards. Because we are usually accustomed to using orbs, which go in steps of 20, but here we can have anything in between too. So I think that will be how we're going to get rewards. But that is not the end of the rewards, because there's a different, there are 2 more things for that. First, to avoid the spam refreshing, which is preventing an abuse of the mechanic and also making it easier to level early on, every instance is going to have the same delirium percentage. So that means that whenever you enter the coast, it will always be at, let's say, 6%. And whenever you enter Blood Aqueduct, it will always be, let's say, 79%. And will always be the same amount of delirium that you will find in that instance. And also, when you get delirium rewards, as it's a delirious instance, you're going to have a set amount of reward tiles. And whenever they reach 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth, they're going to drop the loot directly on the ground. And in this case, they're not going to stay the same type of reward, but they're going to shuffle then. So let's say you start with no rewards, not no rewards, but no reward percentage, and you have 4 rewards, or 3 rewards, which is currency, weapons, and catalysts. Once you get to 1 reward, it's going to shuffle, and let's say now it's scarabs, incubators, and armor. And then again, once you get your reward for the second, so it fills to 2 and goes down again, and will start going for 3, it's going to shuffle again, and now it's Abyss, and Blight. So whenever you get the rewards, it's going to be random new rewards, which is going to make it a lot more versatile, and again helping with against the spam refreshing, as it's going to be random rewards and same delirium percentage. And lastly, they did mention that the campaign areas will not be too crazy, especially those who have bosses you have to kill, for example Merveil, Brutus, Wall Oversoul. And lastly, nope, I think that's all the important information about Delirium. And it is Trade League again, so you can play with your buddies, you can play together, or you can play alone or just trade. Or it has a SSF version, and it is voided because it's going to be definitely an amazing loot fiesta. And rewards 50 Atlantis mystery box, and then 60, 70, 80, 85, and 90 and 95 for a chance to get an MTX based off randomly drawn from all people who reach that level. I think 85 looks pretty nice in this case, which is what I will try to aim for. So with that, let's take a look at the build. I'm first going to show you 2 videos of maps I played, a T3 100% Delirium and a T16 without Delirium, so you can get your own feeling for the build. Alright, now that you've seen the video, let's take a look at the build itself. So, you've seen an arc, an elementalist that uses arc, but what you've also have seen, we are not really killing with arc itself, but we are igniting enemies and let them burn and die to the fire. It is definitely an amusing build, it is fun. It does drop off a bit towards the late game if you don't have proper gear, which one I had random gear. If you take a look in game, like no dot on the weapon, just random life resistance gear with some stats sprinkled in between. I do use an Archdemon crown, however it has nothing special on it, even though it's influenced. Same for the belt. What I am using is a 6-link and amulet, which is the primordial chain, and I am using a titanium spray shield that has socketed reservation efficiency for socketed auras. However, if you have aura issues, you could just early on drop Helmet of Thunder. It's not too hard to get 10 to 15. Even 10 is enough for this build. You don't need 15%. So I think it's fairly cheap to get going. It is... Sorry. It is a nice build for up to early maps, later maps, mid maps. It's still good. And then once you reach high tier maps, you will need to get some upgrades. Like, okay, I admit this is the only one I have. Faster ignite on boots. You could get dot on gloves. You can get dot or double dot on amulet. You can get dot +1 to lightning on the wand. There's a lot of potential upgrades that you can make it to feel it good even in higher tier maps. But for now, this is a league start environment, almost no cost outside of the shield, let's say, and the helmet base. Let's say that costs a tiny bit, but that won't be an issue with Delirium everywhere. Let's take a look at the tree. We are an elementalist, and we are using Shaper of Flame to get most of our damage. Because our hits always ignite and our lightning damage can ignite, we will apply a heavy ignite on enemies. And also we have more damage with ignites when the highest damage type is fire, so I guess we don't have it after all. We are also using Mastermind of Discord for an additional affecting additional negative resistances when we apply exposure and a bit of mana regeneration. We do need this exposure for bosses. And lastly, we are going to use Leech of Primordial and Elementalist for golems. The golems are first giving us a good amount of meat shield. So they're going to walk around and they're going to be targeted instead of us going to be targeted. And second, they're going to give us a nicely buff in defense and offensive with Flame Golem, Flame Golem, Chaos Golem, Stone Golem, and what was the last one? Was it Lightning Golem? Let's check. Yeah, Lightning Golem. So those are our golems of choice. However, if you think you don't need Elementer, you don't need the additional golem, you could also take Shape of Storm for a bit of damage. I think, however, that Elementer for golems is good, and then using early on the primordial chain to get even more golems, and later on a good dot amulet is better. For our tree, we do want to use a cluster later on, but for now we will level with Stormblast Mines and Orb of Storms, going to transition into Armageddon Brand and Cremation at level 28 once we have a falling for Armageddon Brand, and then later on a second falling for Cremation. And later on, after we're done with the acts and we have gotten most of our tree, I recommend about level 70 with this tree. About this tree, we can transition into the arc setup. Also having a 6-link won't hurt, as then it's going to start feel really smooth. And so for early maps, I think Cremation and Armor Brand will still hold up well, and then we can transition into this setup. Rest of our tree is pretty much just life, lightning damage, a bit of fire damage over time. We're going to use the fire exposure, and we're going to use the fire damage over time multiplier. For the fire mastery, more fire damage over time, generic damage over time with increased duration of ailments, and then on lightning we have non-lightning damage plus non-crit, not really needed, but it's okay to have. And non-projectile chaining, lightning skill chains one additional time, which means more damage on single target, because arc deals more damage for remaining chains, and it means more clear, always good. And on the left side of the tree we have more life, we have our only cluster of aura efficiency we need, we have a bit of resistance and armor, and a bit more of armor and life, aura effect and life, more elemental damage. We are using Divine Shield for a nice survivability layer. If you have a Glorious Vanity, which is not a League start setup, so I will not consider that, even though I used it in-game, it is not needed or required, but it is a nice to have and can be acquired early on based on how many people run Legion, and you will price it for a reasonable price. You can get it with Doyani to get armor as life as extra ES, and if that is not doable, you could just do the chest craft, which gives you, and with ES bases will give you enough energy shields that it is noticeable to use Divine Shield here. Also getting a bit of ES from Face of Steel. Lastly, we are going to use Tireless to get reduced skill cost, and we're going to use Sanctuary for a bit of block, add more resistances so we have it easier on our gear choices, and going to round up with Discipline and Training, Retribution, and Sanctity for just a bit of overall life and damage. A pretty simple tree. On the right side, of course, I forgot to mention we are using Golem Commander and more Ignite damage, and we can use Wicked Ward, same reason, Divine Shield, just having an additional survivability layer with the Energy Shield. If you want to take a quick overlook of the levels, again, I don't think I have mentioned it, but passive building will be in the description. Starting as Lightning, going for Lightning damage and Elemental Overload. First Elemental Overload, then Crackling Speed, then the Life, and then we're going to be 28, so we can go for Brands, going for Breath of Flames and Holy Fire, which will mostly be helping us with our clear. Our single damage will use Elemental Focus, so no Ignite there, but Cremation has a high early damage, so it should be okay. Going to get our auras in, so we can use a 50% aura here if needed, but not necessary. If you think you have enough survival without, you can skip that for later. Instead, directly go for Divine Judgment, also life with here. Going for the next more life and even more life, and then we're going for more life. More life and Sanctuary. And after that is really just our golems, and plates of steel and more damage. And lastly, our lightning damage and finishing up the tree. After that, we just take the cluster. Cluster, we want smoking remains and prismatic heart on the large one. Also, disorienting display won't hurt to have, but not necessarily needed. The blind isn't as important anymore because we are not evasion based. And then we just really can take jewel sockets. You can adjust the tree if you don't want and take one more jewel socket here, but I think this is okay enough with 1, 2, 3 jewel sockets for dot lightning damage live. I don't think this is going to be a fairly pricey, at least the fire damage and fire dot multi and lightning damage, as that is not a combo that is usually bought by people, but will definitely help us a lot. And that is about the tree. Oh wait, for the medium cluster we do want any 2 good passives. I'm using Burning Bright and Blowback here, but in game I'm not even using a large cluster. Not medium cluster, I was running it with 86, so pretty heavy scuffed just to test it out. For our skills in the endgame setup, we do want Arc with Burning Damage, Swift Affliction, Deadly Elements, Ignite Proliferation, and lastly added Lightning Damage. We do want at least the 5 link added Lightning Damage. It would be our 6th link once we have that. And we can use the Awakened versions, of course, but those in Endless Delirium might be a bit harder. For our debuffing, we are early on using Wave of Conviction to apply exposure, as well as getting Hex Touch and Flammability on it and Combustion. And then later on we can use Stormbrand. Stormbrand will result in more consistent applying, but Stormbrand will only be usable once you have Archdemon Crown or a helmet, then it can apply exposure on its own, and you don't need the exposure of Wave of Conviction. We are using golems in a immediate setup, which will be stone, chaos, and lightning. And we're going to use a separate flame golem. However, you can get the link working, and you can even drop meat shield if you don't want to use it. I like it to have just to get some survivability on the chaos golem, so your physical damage reduction is up all the time, and for the lightning golem, so your cast speed is up all the time. The stone golem is pretty sturdy and the flame golem is fairly sturdy too, so it's not too bad. For your auras, you want to use at late game Malevolence, because our only damage really is the Ignite, Determination for survivability, and a Herald of Thunder for a bit of extra damage. Not too much, but it's nice to have. Also, it can proc, throw the tiny lightnings once you're shocked, so it's a bit utilizing our clear as well. Flame Dash with Arc and Surge. Only level Arc and Surge once Flame Dash is fully leveled and quality leveled. So you're always up once you use your Flame Dash. Then we want a spell totem with Flame Surge. Flame Surge will apply a Burning Wound with 25% of the Ignite. So basically it's a 25% more damage, which is absurd. I didn't even know about that before I made this build. Or not made, found this build. And then lastly you have 2 slots that you can use however you want, or use a cast when damage taken setup if you want more survivability. For the items, I think I've already mentioned it, but I've shown you what I have, but the better gear would be you want a dot plus a fire dot wand with +1 to lightning. Again, this is a combo that will be very useful to you, but hardly useful to others, so I think it should not be too pricey. For the shield, a +1 lightning with light would be nice, but the +1 lightning is not too needed. For the helmet, life and resistances. For the body armor, life and resistances, and hopefully the craft max life SES. For the gloves, we want life and resistances. For the boots, we want life and resistances on top of some movement speed, but again, just to get as good as possible. Amulet, early on we want a primordial chain, and we're going to use the Arsonist anointment. Arsonist is in reach on so we could just grab it for a few more passives. However, the next best anointment then would be, where is it? A Growth and Decay, but that requires a golden oil, so just save some passive points and anoint Arsonist. It's quite cheap to anoint, and later on when you have a good amulet with dot or maybe even double dot, you can anoint Growth and Decay on it, as you won't be upgrading back from that. Rings are pretty much just life stats and resistances, although you can get the stats pretty much anywhere. I've put them on the rings because it didn't really count. You can use Vermilion rings, as most of your gear will be rares. You can get resistances anywhere. You don't really need resistances ring. You could, if you want to go offensive, go with Opal rings instead. Lastly, we can use a crystal or leather build with strength a bit and some life, and again dexterity with an essence. Here we can only do it with essences. We want an Aziri's Promise for a bit of damage and chaos damage leech-life, so we have a bit of life leech. Also, we want to use a Quicksilver Flask, an Eternal Mana Flask with the Enduring modifier, a Granite Flask, and a Divine Life Flask with Seizing modifier. For the Quicksilver and Granite, I do recommend Sinners or anything like that gets you charged when you're getting hit. So it's up more often, as we are an armor and ES based or life based character and not an evasion based. We're going to get hit a few times, and the clusters are already covered, but going to cover again. Large fire cluster with prismatic heart and smoking remains, and then anything else. And a medium cluster with any two notables that give you 5%, about 5% or more damage. It should be quite easy to get anything good here. Blowback, however, I think is one of the best things you can get, and Burning Bright is literally just damage, as we don't have a lot of AoE outside of Ignite Proliferation. And then our damage over time, lightning damage clusters. Double damage over time might be a bit too expensive. That sums up the tree. In the notes section you will find the leveling steps that I recommend to take. Early on we're going to do a lot of switching. Once we kill Gravicus and reach level 28, we can finally upgrade to Armageddon brand. We will need a 4 blue link and a blue green green. Later on we can add a second blue to our cremation with Control Destruction and end of Act 4, and upgrade our Armageddon brand with Immolate and Ignite Proliferation, heavily improving our clear. And later on in Act 6 we can improve our mobility speed by using Shield Charge with faster attacks, because at that point you should look for a wand upgrade that dropped on the ground and get a shield upgrade with life, so you are a bit more tanky, as the wand craft will have dropped down at that point. After the X, once you have your 6 link and at least the Ignite Ascendency, you can swap to the Arc setup. I recommend, as I already mentioned, to do that at level 70. And I think that's all. I hope this build was helpful and it looked interesting. Let me know in the comments if you decide to play this build for Delirium Everywhere. I was about to say Endless Delirium, but it's a different name. If you play this for Delirium Everywhere, or if you say this is going to be too risky, what are you going to play instead? And maybe even if you're going to play Delirium Everywhere after all. All that being said, have a wonderful day.